Welcome to the Daily Debrief, an inside look at today's top story. And today's top story is the FDA gave emergency use for the Pfizer vaccine in ages 12 to 15. I'm Jason Denant with KTNV Digital, and joining me is Joe Bartels. How are you doing, Joe?
Good, Jason. Thank you.
Now, your story, you talked to both a parent who is not likely going to give their child the vaccine, and then also a doctor who said that you should be getting the vaccine. Now, there's so much talk about the 12 to the 15-year-old age range today. What is the pros and cons for that age range getting the vaccine after you talk to both sides today?
Well, you're right. The FDA approving the Pfizer vaccine for 12 to 15 is pretty big news. This has been in the works for a while. They're basing this on clinical trial data that showed that it provides a very good, safe, and effective defense against COVID-19 for that age group. What's significant about this is that this is the youngest yet for any age group for any vaccine that's available right now. So this is pretty big in terms of the game-changing status of it. However, there are other steps that need to go on. I did reach out to the Southern Nevada Health District today, for example, and they said just because the FDA has approved it, it still needs to go through a couple of other steps before it can actually be allocated and then given to that age group here locally. So still some steps, but still a positive sign. And you're right. A local doctor that I spoke to says that it is safe, it is effective. He is encouraging his patients to get it, citing the data, saying it's safe and effective. However, this is still a fairly new vaccine in the grand scheme of things. And this was just approved for emergency use today. So there is still some work to be done in terms of trying to persuade people who have children who say, look, like I'm still concerned about maybe the long-term effects. And that was the parent I spoke to today. She's been vaccinated, she's protected, but she's really concerned about her two children, ages 13 and 16, who are both now eligible. But she's concerned, looking in 6 months, a year, 5 years from now, she's concerned about the long-term effects. So that's the pros and cons of it.
Now, is there anything that's happening right now in regards to, or thoughts that the doctor may have provided in regards to school-age children? There's a lot of talk about, is it going to be mandatory for them to get that? And what's the likelihood that that will take effect?
Yeah, so I spoke to Dr. Michael Levin. He told me that he suspects at some point that this vaccine will be mandated once it gets to the full-fledged approval process, like we've seen with Pfizer moving kind of in that direction for everybody. But he suspects, just like polio or measles or any of the other diseases that have largely been eradicated, these vaccines for these diseases have been around for decades and they've proven very effective, and many school districts require them as a means to get into and be enrolled in school because these diseases can be controlled to some degree and some level with proper vaccinations and requiring it across the board. So he suspects, given the success of it so far, that he would believe that eventually would see a COVID-19 vaccine requirements moving forward for school-age children. But just when is the big question.
Now, right now, Pfizer is the only one that is available for children as young as 12. What's going on with the other vaccines, especially here locally?
So there is one vaccine, Novavax, and there's been a lot of actually breaking developments today because of it. We just heard from Novavax, the CEO says they are going to postpone their request for emergency use authorization in adults until next quarter. They weren't quite ready just yet to file. So that's coming in the pipeline. We know Novavax will be filing for an emergency use authorization, similar to Moderna, similar to Pfizer, the other ones that we've seen so far, so J&J. So expect that maybe down the road in 2021. In terms of children, I learned today from Novavax that the doctor who's heading up the clinical trials here, he says that they just are enrolling kids 12 to 17 for the Novavax. So that'd be the younger age group that we've already seen for Pfizer, for example. Novavax is already moving along in the process to see how effective their vaccine is for that age group. He also, the doctor told me, he suspects that maybe even Pfizer and Moderna may be already working towards investigating how young, maybe 6 to 11 years old, how effective that vaccine is. And those results could be coming forth in the near future. So he suspects that there is already investigation underway for even the youngest of the population.